The mainstream media's portrayal of climate change has become a contentious issue, with some arguing that it is being used as a tool to oppress Christians. While this claim may seem far-fetched, a closer examination of the media's narrative and its implications for Christian values and practices reveals a more nuanced reality. The media's emphasis on climate change has led to a shift in focus away from traditional Christian beliefs and towards a more secular, environmentalist agenda. One of the primary ways in which the media uses climate change to oppress Christians is by perpetuating a narrative that prioritizes environmental concerns over human well-being. This is evident in the media's frequent depiction of climate change as an existential threat that requires immediate action, often at the expense of human life and dignity. For example, the media's focus on reducing carbon emissions has led to a push for policies that restrict access to fossil fuels, which can have devastating effects on low-income families and communities who rely on these resources for their livelihood. This narrative ignores the Christian principle of caring for the poor and vulnerable, and instead prioritizes the interests of the environment over those of human beings. Furthermore, the media's climate change narrative often has a distinctly anti-Christian tone, with many environmentalists and scientists espousing views that are explicitly at odds with Christian teachings. For instance, the concept of Gaia theory, which posits that the Earth is a living, sentient being that should be worshipped and protected, is a clear example of a pagan ideology that contradicts a Christian view of the natural world as created by God for human use and stewardship. The media's promotion of such ideology serves to undermine Christian values and beliefs, and creates a cultural climate in which Christians are seen as out of touch and ignorant of the scientific consensus on climate change. The media's suppression of dissenting voices on climate change is another way in which it uses the issue to oppress Christians. Any scientist or expert who dares to question the prevailing narrative on climate change is quickly labeled a denier or skeptic and marginalized by the media. This silencing of dissenting voices has a chilling effect on free speech and open debate, and creates a culture of intimidation and fear that prevents Christians from speaking out on the issue. Moreover, the media's refusal to engage with Christian perspectives on climate change, such as the concept of stewardship and the importance of human flourishing, serves to further marginalize and exclude Christians from the public conversation. In addition, the media's emphasis on climate change has led to a proliferation of policies and initiatives that infringe upon Christian liberties and freedoms. For example, the push for green technologies and renewable energy sources has led to the introduction of regulations and taxes that disproportionately affect Christian businesses and organizations. The media's silence on these issues, and its failure to report on the negative consequences of such policies, serves to perpetuate a climate of oppression and persecution against Christians. Finally, the media's use of climate change to oppress Christians is also evident in its promotion of climate justice narrative that prioritizes the interests of non-Christian communities and nations over those of Christian-majority countries. This narrative often ignores the historical and ongoing contributions of Christian missionaries and organizations to environmental conservation and sustainable development, and instead portrays Christianity as a primary driver of environmental degradation and destruction. The media's promotion of this narrative serves to perpetuate a negative and inaccurate stereotype of Christianity, and creates a cultural climate in which Christians are seen as responsible for the world's environmental problems. In conclusion, the mainstream media's portrayal of climate change has become a tool of repression against Christians, perpetuating a narrative that prioritizes environmental concerns over human well-being, suppresses dissenting voices, and promotes policies and ideologies that infringe upon Christian liberties and freedoms. By examining the ways in which the media uses climate change to oppress Christians, we can gain a deeper understanding of the complex and nuanced relationships between media, culture, and faith, and work towards creating a more just and equitable public conversation that respects the values and perspectives of all individuals, regardless of their religious beliefs.